What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football this upcoming season. I will also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every team in that specific conference, just as a synopsis for all of my schedule predictions, of which I am currently behind schedule on, so I will be putting out a lot more content soon to try to catch up on those. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the South Carolina Gamecocks schedule predictions. So just some quick thoughts on the South Carolina program overall, and this is a program that has very quickly turned things around after year one under Shane Beamer, in my opinion. They got a very big bowl win last year to cap off the season, and that momentum is going to transfer over through the offseason, and so far it has. It's looking very good as far as the momentum around the program is concerned for South Carolina currently, and I think going forward as well. And then if you add in a very active offseason in the transfer portal, adding star players like Spencer Rattler, and things are looking much better for South Carolina than they have in a little bit. It's been a little while since things have been positive there, especially during the Muschamp era. So things are starting to look up there, and that's very exciting for the people in Columbia. And the culture that Shane Beamer is building there is also something that is very much deserving of immense praise. To overhaul the program and the team mentality in 1 year is no easy task, but Beamer has done an outstanding job at that, and that alone makes the outlook on the program as a whole infinitely better than it would be without that. I think he has proven to be one of the best culture builders that we've seen as far as just quickly getting in and establishing a very good winning culture early on. Him and Sam Pittman both great at that. So let's go ahead and dive into the schedule, starting with some guaranteed wins for South Carolina against teams that just really don't have any hope of beating them next year, barring some level of catastrophe. And those teams are Georgia State, Charlotte, South Carolina State, and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt maybe has a chance, not necessarily guaranteed, but also I think it's a long enough of an of a long shot that it's not really worth discussing here. And so the first game that we're going to talk about is at Arkansas, and that is in week 2, and that is a very, very tough way to open up the SEC schedule. Arkansas is a team that I am very high on next year. Higher than most people, honestly, and I think most people are all pretty high on Arkansas as a whole next year. I think KJ Jefferson versus Spencer Rattler is going to be a very interesting quarterback battle to watch here. I would currently lean KJ Jefferson in that one, but it's very close. I think Arkansas is slightly more talented roster-wise, but not dramatically more talented. And it's a very good, evenly matched matchup in my opinion. Maybe slight edge to Arkansas overall. And then you factor in that it is on the road. It's at Arkansas. I'm going to go with Arkansas to get the win here, mainly due to that home field advantage, plus maybe a slight talent edge and a slight quarterback edge if you just had to really pick one. But honestly, I think it's a very evenly matched game. Could go either way. And I'm very, very excited to see how that one plays out week 2. And the next game up for South Carolina is Georgia, and again, just a brutal way to start off the SEC schedule. You open at Arkansas, and then you go to you host Georgia the week after. It's a rough way to begin the season for anybody. Georgia is a team that is just better than South Carolina at this point. They're a more talented team, top to bottom. There's really not a position that you could argue South Carolina is better than them at. I mean, maybe quarterback, but again, Georgia is, they're returning incredible talent across the offense. Their defense loses a lot of talent, and early in the season, I think that could be an issue for them. I think by late season, they're going to be perfectly fine defensively because the people that they have coming back are just as talented as the ones that left. But Georgia, like I said, they're just a better team than South Carolina at this point. It's a game that could definitely end up being a big upset. For South Carolina, if they were able to pull off that win against Georgia, it's a game that Georgia needs to be very careful in. Being in Williams-Brice is always a treacherous place to play, but I think Georgia gets the win. I think they're just better by too much of a degree for South Carolina to pull off the upset here. And then the next game up is at Kentucky, and this is another one that is just really tough for me to pick. I think Kentucky and South Carolina are very evenly matched, maybe edge to South Carolina roster-wise, but they have a bad history against Kentucky, and I know that doesn't necessarily affect this year's game, but Kentucky always seems to have their number, and then being on the road here too is I think going to loom quite large. I think at Kentucky is a very tough place for South Carolina to go and win, and Will Levis is no slouch at quarterback either. I think it's, again, very evenly matched. Could go either way, but I'm going to pick Kentucky mainly due to them being at home for this one. A game that I really, it's very, very close. It's very much a toss-up. South Carolina could very well get that win. But I'm going to say Kentucky for the sake of this video. And then the next game on the schedule is at home against Texas A&M, and this one is one where I have South Carolina pulling off an upset win, and it is an upset. Texas A&M is a better roster than them across the board, but I think A&M is getting a little bit too much hype. I think they're slightly overrated for what they're going to have next year. Their historic recruiting class are all going to be freshmen, so their impact is limited for sure. And I just don't think that they're quite as good as most people are making them out to be. Plus, again, it's in Williams-Brice, and that is always a very tough place to play. So I think with the addition of Spencer Rattler, that gives South Carolina the ability to win games like this when they're not the better team, but their quarterback isn't completely holding them back either, and he can elevate the team a little bit. So it is definitely an upset win, but it's not an outlandish upset in my opinion. It is very possible. I wouldn't say that it is the most likely, of outcomes, but I'm going to say that South Carolina gets a big upset win against Texas A&M here in a big home game that should get the momentum for the season back on track. Next game up is Missouri, also at home, and I think South Carolina is better than Missouri. They're not dramatically better than them, but they are a better roster than them. They have a better quarterback than them, and they're at home for this one, so a lot of advantages their way. I think it's a game that they need to be careful in. They could definitely lose it. Missouri is a good enough team to win that game for sure, but I think all odds are sort of in South Carolina's favor there. I have South Carolina getting another win there. And then the next one up is at Florida, and again, I think South Carolina is a little bit better than Florida at this point, especially because they're in year 2 under Beamer versus year 1 under Napier for Florida. And I think South Carolina has the better quarterback in that game as well. But it is in the swamp, and that is always a very, very scary thought. Playing in the swamp is very difficult, no matter who you are, no matter how good your team is. But I think South Carolina is going to be able to go in there and get a win in a tough, hostile environment. I have them beating Florida. I don't know if it's necessarily an upset. I think it's a game that's kind of a toss-up. Could go either way. There's no clear better team in that one, in my opinion. I think the edge would probably be to South Carolina. But again, overall, it's pretty even. I have South Carolina getting the win on the road, though. And then another game that is a very tough matchup. They host Tennessee is the next game on the schedule. And Tennessee is a team that I'm very high on next year. I think Tennessee is going to be very good. And I think their offense in particular is going to be very, very good. But I do think that Tennessee is a year or maybe even a couple of years, but they're just a little bit away from being that dominant team. They're not at the Georgia or Alabama level, really. I think they're probably around the Texas A&M range, maybe not even quite as good as them. And so I think this is a game that South Carolina is not quite as good as Tennessee, but it's very close. I think the quarterback matchup is about even. And I think with them being at home, I think they're going to have a lot of momentum heading into this one. This is a game that is definitely going to be circled on the calendar for sure in the preseason. These two teams don't really get along very well, and they have some interesting history together. And South Carolina had a pretty abysmal performance against Tennessee last year that I'm sure they're going to want to make up for. And so I think South Carolina's going to come out, and I think they're going to get a win here in what I would consider to be a small upset. But again, I think the teams are pretty evenly matched if we're being honest about it overall. I think they're pretty evenly matched, and with it being in Columbia, I have South Carolina getting a very hard-fought win here. Could go either way again, like a lot of the games on this schedule. It's a very tough schedule, but I have South Carolina getting a win. And then to end the season, South Carolina goes at Clemson for their in-state rival, and this is another one that I'm very excited to see because Clemson is a very hard team to get a read on right now. Their defense is probably going to be elite once again. They are a more talented team than South Carolina across the board, but not dramatically so. And quarterback is a massive question mark for Clemson right now. Is it going to be DJU? Is it going to be Cade Klubnik? If it is Klubnik, how good is he? If it's DJU, is it the same one as last year, or is it a much improved DJU? There's a lot of questions here. And so Clemson is a hard team to get a read on, but I do think that they're going to end up being a very good team again. And I think being at home here is a very big advantage for them. I think if they were in Columbia for this one, I would be much more likely to pick South Carolina. But being at home End of the year, I think Clemson is currently just still a better team than them. I'm going to have to say Clemson gets the win there. It's a game that, again, South Carolina could pull off the upset in. It should be a very, very tightly contested game. I expect it to get pretty interesting. I'm really excited to see how that one unfolds. But for the prediction, I'm going to have to go with Clemson getting the win there. And so that would make South Carolina 8-4 on the season, which feels about right to me. Now, there are some games on there where they could get wins, where I have them losing, and there are others where I have them winning, where they could lose. For example, they could upset Georgia or upset Clemson, or they could beat Kentucky or Arkansas, but then they could also lose to a Florida or a Texas A&M as well. So overall, I feel like really anything between that 7 and that 9 win range is pretty realistic for South Carolina next season. I'm going to take the middle of those with an 8-4 season, and I think South Carolina fans should be very happy with that kind of year. Considering how hard their schedule is, they play in the SEC. Out of the West, they draw Texas A&M. Their in-state conference, or their in-state rival, is against Clemson, which is about as hard as those can get as far as out-of-conference rivalries go. I think 8-4 would be an outstanding year for South Carolina. I think they should be very happy with that. And I think if they do that, it's just proof that the program really is heading in that right direction. And it should give them good hope for the future. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you agree and or disagree with me on the South Carolina schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they're going to have next year and who they will lose to, if anyone. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more college football content in the future. Like I said, I'm a little bit behind on my videos right now, so I should have a lot coming out soon, recording a lot right now, and so be on the lookout for that stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.